Hi.
Hi. Hear me?
Okay.
It's
So,
audible.
pardon?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Okay. So I think we can start off. Good evening,
Yes.
everybody here. Today we have with us a very special guest speaker. This is Zac Sangeeth. He is a 10-year-old historian as well as author, perhaps one of the youngest historians and authors in India or perhaps even the world. He is going to be an author, a published author. His book, 3 Points World History, is going to be published by Hachette, which is the second largest publishing company in the world. And today he's going to be talking to us about history, um, which is his subject of interest. He's going to be unraveling an intriguing historical thread running from 2500 BC till today on how women are perceived in history and how it has shaped our society today. So yeah, Zac, I think you can start off.
So history is a very interesting subject. And as we look at the beginning of recorded history in around BC 2500, we see that women are both important and powerful. And maybe to understand this properly, I will give you an example. In around 2300 BC, there was a woman named Enheduanna from ancient Sumer or Babylonia in Mesopotamia. This is one of the first civilizations recorded in history. Enheduanna was the high priestess. She composed 42 hymns, and she is the first named author in recorded history. She also rose to many positions which at that point of time was reserved for men. Another great example is Hatshepsut. She's a pharaoh of the 18th dynasty of Egypt. She again was in around 1500 BCE. She was the earlier pharaoh's wife, and then she became the then ruler's regent. And she was one of the most successful pharaohs ever. She made Egypt a superpower through trade. It is said in records that ships of gold and ivory came into Egypt during her reign. And she also commissioned hundreds of architectural projects, including buildings, temples. Another great example is the Kingdom of Kush, which was a major trading center. It was in fact very close to Egypt itself. Egyptians even believed that it was actually a part of Egypt. But Kushites, who were the inhabitants of Egypt, of Kush, actually believed that they were their own kingdom with their own values and their own civilization. And the Kingdom of Kush, in fact, flourished most because of its powerful warrior queens, which held high positions. But as we look around 500 BC, women start to disappear from the pages of history. From 2500 to 500 BC, they were important, but then they disappeared. Why? So that will be the topic of our discussion today. So to actually understand why women just vanished from the pages of history, we will look at two classical civilizations which emerged at around the same time in 500 BC, and how these two civilizations impacted the role of women in history. So first, we will look at Greece. Greeks worshipped goddesses. An example for this is Athena, who is known as the goddess of wisdom and war. In fact, the modern capital of Greece, Athens, was named after Athena. And if you go to Greece, Greeks even call Athens Athena. And in the center of Athens, there is a brilliant temple called the Acropolis, which in fact is a wonder of the world. The Acropolis, again, was dedicated to Athena. But Greeks, in fact, did not practice what they preached. In around 507 BC, a great Greek thinker named Cleisthenes came up with a political ideology which was called the democracy. Democracy simply meant the rule of the people. And it stated that whoever was mature enough could actually vote for the ruler they wanted instead of having tyrants to rule over them. But though it was called the rule of the people, it actually did not include women that much. Women were not allowed to vote. They were not allowed to have good jobs. And women did not hold any high positions in records during the Greek time. During this time. In 336 BC, Alexander the Great, a Greek emperor, started his conquest of the known world. He conquered Babylonia, Egypt, and Kush, which were all places that earlier had their own values which allowed women to rise up. But when he conquered these areas, he spread what we call Hellenism, which is the Greek culture. And when he spread it to these areas, again, these areas began curtailing women. So now the ancient civilizations of Egypt, Sumer and Kush, which earlier when we looked at were actually allowing women to rise up to high positions, they started curtailing women. So now the next civilization we'll be looking at will be Roman civilization. Again, Romans worshipped goddesses. A great example for this, I think, would be Minerva, who's the goddess of wisdom, poetry, music, and war. In fact, do you know why the owl is considered wise? It is because in Roman mythology, Minerva is always depicted holding an owl in one of her hands. And since she is again the goddess of wisdom, the owl is also considered wise. In fact, the German philosopher Georg Hegel had a quote, quoting, "The owl of Minerva only takes flight at dusk." This simply means that the owl of Minerva, which is wisdom, only takes flight at dusk, meaning that you have to think over things through the night for wisdom to actually come. And again, like the Greeks, Romans also did not practice their preachings. In around 510 BC, around the same time as Greek democracy, there was the Romans overthrew a tyrant named Tarquin. Tarquin, in fact, came from a long line of Roman rulers, starting with Romulus in around 800 BC, who's regarded and credited as being the founder of Rome. Tarquin was a mad tyrant, and when Romans overthrew him, they actually didn't have a way to govern by themselves. That is when they came up with another political ideology called the Republic. And the Republic, in fact, stated that there would be a ruler, but he would not be allowed to usurp a lot of power. He would not be allowed to manhandle his people. And he would be guided by a group of scholars called the Senate. After this, Julius Caesar, a great dictator, rose. He named himself dictator for life. With this, the Republic fell because Julius Caesar is usurping too much power. In fact, during the same time as Julius Caesar, in Egypt, there was a powerful queen called Cleopatra. And though Egypt was a place which at that point of time had a lot of Hellenism, meaning that women were actually curtailed, there is a reason why Cleopatra rose to power. It is because Cleopatra came from a long line of rulers called the Ptolemaic dynasty. the Ptolemies were Greeks, and they actually did not embrace Egyptian values, but instead embraced Greek values. Cleopatra understood that Egyptian values could actually benefit Egypt better, and because of this, the Egyptian people liked her and got her to the throne. After Julius Caesar died, his foster son Augustus Caesar took the throne of Rome. In fact, he established the Roman Empire. And when he established the Roman Empire, he also established what we call the Julio-Claudian dynasty, which is the first 5 dynasties, the first 5 emperors who ruled the Roman Empire. But again, the Julio-Claudian dynasty followed the same values of the Republic and worshipped women, but curtailed them. And there was also many. I'll give you a few examples. One great example is Nero, who is known as the last emperor of the Julio-Claudian dynasty. He, in fact, assassinated his mother, Agrippina the Younger, who is known as one of the most prominent women in history. And when Nero realized that she was gaining a lot of power, he decided to get her assassinated, and she was stabbed at the back. Then there is also the great Marcus Aurelius, who is regarded as being the philosopher king of Rome. In fact, when Marcus Aurelius died, he had a son named Commodus and a daughter named Lucilla. Commodus was a mad tyrant, again like Tarquin. In fact, he ended the Pax Romana, which was peace in Rome. And if his sister, Lucilla, had actually rose, Rome would have had a golden age. But because Lucilla was a woman, she was not allowed to rise. Another great example, in fact, is Cleopatra herself. So she was taken advantage by Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, who used her for many of their conquests. And in fact, Julius Caesar again adopted many of Cleopatra's Egyptian ideas and embraced them to make his Roman Empire flourish. And when Augustus Caesar rose, in fact, he surrounded Cleopatra, giving her no option but only to commit suicide. She got a snake and made the snake bite her. And again, the Julio-Claudian dynasty conquered most of the world, just like Alexander the Great in Greece. And they again spread these Roman values throughout the places they conquered. When the Western Roman Empire was having its decline, there was a major event, what we now call the Battle of the Milvian Bridge. It was between two enemies, two rivals, Constantine and Maxentius. Constantine, in fact, made a vow that if he defeated Maxentius, he would adopt Christianity. And in the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, he in fact was able to corner Maxentius. And when Maxentius had to take his whole army through a light bridge, it broke. And in fact, Maxentius also fell and drowned. That is why it's called the Battle of the Milvian Bridge. When Constantine won the war, he adopted Christianity. And that might have actually led to the decline of the Roman Empire. Until then, the Romans worshipped the empire and the emperor itself as their god. So they were willing to die for the empire. But because they were now they had adopted Christianity and were not willing to die for the empire, but rather for Jesus, the empire actually failed and fell. But the problem is that Christians again worship women but curtail them. An example for this is Mother Mary. So do you see the pattern? Greeks worship women but curtail them. Romans worship women but curtail them. Christians worship women but curtail them. And as these people conquer the world, they also spread these values which they have and spread it throughout the world also. And then in around 476 BC, the Western Roman Empire fell, allowing the Eastern Roman Empire to rise, which made its capital in Constantinople, which is modern-day Istanbul, Turkey. And they also adopted Christianity because of Constantine. And again, when the Eastern Roman Empire rose, they started curtailing women because of the Christian values. And in fact, because they curtailed women, and there were no great women who rose during that time, there was even the Dark Ages, where religion was more important than other things, including physics, math, science, most of your subjects. And because of that, there were no great discoveries in these subjects. In 1453 AD, however, the Ottoman Empire, which was an Islamic empire, conquered Constantinople. They laid siege on Constantinople, and many of the great thinkers in Constantinople, who all had were grounded in Roman, Greek, and Christian books, fled to Europe. Now in Europe, many great events happened because of these thinkers who had fled to Europe with all these books. I'll give you a few examples. So in Renaissance, which was in Italy, there was the Renaissance, which gave way to great thinkers like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo Buonarroti, and Galileo. Then there was a scientific revolution, which again gave way to thinkers like Copernicus and Kepler. There was the Enlightenment, which gave way to Jean-Jacques Rousseau and John Locke. And there was the Reformation, which gave way to thinkers like Martin Luther and John Calvin. But again, as you see, there are no great women thinkers. And this is because all these events were based on the Greek, Roman, and Christian books. So all of these did not actually they all curtailed women. And when the Ottoman Empire conquered Constantinople, in fact, they blocked Constantinople. And until then, Constantinople was the only known way to cross to Asia and trade. But when the Ottoman Empire blocked it, people did not actually have way to go through Constantinople and trade. This led to the New Age discovery, or the New World discovery, which in fact great explorers started traveling the world to find more ways to reach to Asia. One of these people was Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus, while exploring, stumbled upon the Americas. And when he stumbled upon the Americas, he saw that there were so many great new materials which he had never gone through back in Europe and could actually use back in Europe. And so he went back to his rulers in Europe, and they helped him establish the Columbian Exchange, which in fact is similar to, let's say, a Silk Route. The Silk Route just connects Europe and Asia, while the Columbian Exchange connects Europe and the Americas. And there were many great trades which happened, including the trade of potatoes, peanuts, cacao, rubber, and men. In the Columbian Exchange, there was also the spread of diseases which happened. But the most important thing is that when the Europeans started actually mingling with the people in the Americas, they also adopted the same ideas of curtailing women. And it was all the same Greek, Roman, Christian values which curtailed women but worshipped them. So, as you can see, from around 500 BCE all the way to this time, women were worshipped but curtailed. And this went on for almost 2,400 years till 1848, till around the 1800s, when many great women empowerment movements started to come up. One being the Declaration of Sentiments in 1848, signed by 68 women, demanding that women be treated equally to men. Eventually, in 1920, there was a last amendment, and women were given right to vote in the US. And there are still great women empowerment movements, including Sarah's Girl Up movement. And after the Declaration of Sentiments, you can again see great women having their rise, including Indira Gandhi and Angela Merkel. And there are now 29 countries which have women as their head of state. During the last 100 years, from 1920, when the 19th Amendment of the Declaration of Sentiments came in, giving US women freedom, to 2021, women have been showing a mirror to men. That worshipping them is not the same as allowing them to the same set of freedoms. So that is it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was so interesting. And I think one of the most important points that I picked up from this is that by curtailing women, we are actually slowing down the progress of so many nations and so many scientific developments and so many developments in art. Because let's say in the Renaissance or periods like that, that women were actually allowed to explore their interests, how much more they could have contributed to all of the fields that they're interested in. So I think that just goes to show that, progress for women is progress for the entire world, including all genders, including men.
Exactly. I think I'll also read a topic from my book, which is the Declaration of Sentiments.
And for those of you who have just joined, Zac is going to be a published author very soon. His book 3 Points World History, which is basically summarizing important topics in history into 3 points, is going to be published by Hachette, which is the second largest book publisher in the world. So yeah, he's going to be reading us an excerpt from his book.
So today I'll be reading the Declaration of Sentiments, which, as you might have understood, was an event in history which demanded equal power between women and men. And so I'll read. The Declaration of Sentiments was a document that outlined the rights of American women, signed off 1848 during the Seneca Falls, New York Convention. So that's my introduction. Now we'll get to the first point. In the early 1800s, men dictated and directed the lives of women. Women were prohibited from owning properties, signing contracts, and voting in elections. There were also severe restrictions on the type of employment that women could take up. Hence, a small band of women got together and started to push against these restrictions, aided by a few progressive men. Second point. The Seneca Falls Convention was organized by 5 women who were also active in the abolitionist movement, which called for an end to slavery. It was the first women's rights convention gathered to discuss the social, civil, and religious rights of women. The 2-day convention was held July 19th to 20th, 1848, and it was attended by almost 300 women. The convention discussed 11 resolutions on women's rights, which were all passed unanimously, except the 9th one, demanding the right to vote for women. Third point. Though the Declaration of Sentiments did not produce any immediate results, the leaders of this convention continued their campaigns and lobbying for women's rights. Eventually, after 72 years in 1920, women were finally granted the same rights as men with the passage of the 19th Amendment to the US Constitution. So that's a page from my book.
Thank you so much. I think we're all quite well versed in history now, thanks to you, Zac.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was a very interesting talk. And Zac, you're only 10 years old and you're able to talk to us so well about history and in such depth. Do you want to tell us how you got into history and what is the most fascinating part of history for you?
Yes, definitely. So I got into history when my mother actually went to Paris, and over there she got pictures through the Louvre Museum, and when she came back home and showed them to me, I was drawn to a small painting called the Mona Lisa. And my mother, in fact, told me about the Mona Lisa, and I got really interested in it. I started studying on it. Every day I'd tell my parents what I had studied on the Mona Lisa. And when my dad learned about my interest in the Mona Lisa, in fact, he showed me a series called The Museum Secrets, which in fact was about the secrets of museums, which and they're revealing it in the series. And again, I watched about the Louvre Museum. I learned about the Mona Lisa. And that is when I actually gathered interest on history in whole. And from then, I slowly started, when my teachers were complaining about my motor skills, I decided it was a good idea to begin writing on what I was learning. And from there, I started researching and studying on history. And that's where I am now. And then I started writing on this.
That's great. That's really nice. Is there anything in history that in particular fascinates you the most?
I think something that fascinates me a lot is these large threads in history, which in fact show that in different times, in different phases, there are many events, but they can all be connected through something small. And I think I'll give you an example of that, which one of them, which I think the most important, is the Silk Road. Another thread is in fact this women's thing that I just told you. But the Silk Route actually is said to have originated in around 130 BC with the Han dynasty in China, when the Han emperor sent his ambassador to find good alliances in the Middle East. His ambassador came back saying that there was not only great alliances but also great trade. And so he formed the Silk Road. But it actually went before that to the Persian Royal Road in around 500 BC. There was the Achaemenid Empire. And all that this Han emperor would have done would have actually extended this Persian Royal Road. Then in around 900 BCE, there was the Assyrian Empire. And when we look at it, it was actually the Assyrian Empire which started the Persian Royal Road. The Persians continued it, and the Han Dynasty expanded China to it. And then again, there was Alexander the Great, who in 336 BC started his conquest of the world. And along the way, he also expanded the Silk Route, the Persian Royal Route, in fact. And then the Han Dynasty emperor just connected China to what was already made by the Achaemenid Empire, the Assyrian Empire, and Alexander the Great. Then again, it can be connected to what we call the fall of Constantinople in 1453 AD, which I have covered in what I just said. And when the Ottoman Empire took over, they actually blocked Constantinople, like I said, which was a major trade passage during that time. And so that led to the New World discovery, when explorers started exploring the world to actually find new ways to trade. Amongst this was Vasco da Gama, who, like Christopher Columbus, found the Americas. Vasco da Gama found a way through Portugal to connect to India, Kerala. And that same route was also later used by the British to again come through to its conquest in India. Then the Ottoman Empire actually took over Constantinople because of the Silk Route. Again, because they used gunpowder, which was traded through the Silk Route, to actually blast the walls of Constantinople and come in. And that is again when they conquered Constantinople. And the same technique was used by Babur, a small chieftain in India. And he, in fact, conquered Ibrahim Lodi, a strong emperor of the Delhi Sultanate. Again, only because of gunpowder.
Yeah, it's really nice to know how, even though like these topics and these places may seem so far off, they're actually quite connected throughout history, and that's very interesting.
Yes.
And it's also very interesting to know this, because I know now a lot of people are so much more into STEM related subjects, and subjects like history aren't often given the importance it needs, but it gives you so much of an insight into culture and history, and it gives you like a sense of identity, which I think is so important.
Yes, it's very important to actually see how the past can improve the present and later on also improve the future, which was again a philosophy stated by the German philosopher Georg Hegel. And he says that though history is never revered as an important subject, in fact a boring subject, it is very important because you can actually use the past to make the present, the future better. An example of that is Greek society. So right now we are individual, but if you look at Greek society, you can actually learn to live in communities. Another example is the Middle Ages, which is actually kind of going against what I'm arguing here. So the Middle Ages, in fact, did not allow women to come up. They, in fact, curtailed women. But again, a great thing you can learn from the Middle Ages is actually that there was a lot of loyalty. So that loyalty can also improve the modern age, though they curtailed women.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I also believe. What I'm trying to do with my book, 3 Points World History, is actually, in fact, to make that true. When people believe that history is such a boring subject, I'm trying to split it into an easier, more fun manner and actually make it more fun, make more people get interested in it. And of course, like I said, the past can improve the present and the future.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll all be getting much more into history after your talk, and as well as after your book comes out, because I'm sure we're all going to look forward to reading it. Yeah. So I think if there's anything else you'd like to add, you can go ahead, or we can go ahead and end the live session. And if anybody wants to ask Zac any questions or anything, you can go ahead and leave a comment down. Okay, I think we don't have any questions. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Zac, for joining us today, and thank you to everybody who joined our live session. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I too enjoyed listening to you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Aditi.
It was a great pleasure.
Thank you, Zac. Bye-bye.
Bye.